Hello there, welcome to Indycar on Thursday morning. My name is Gordon Ross. It is the 25th, I think, of October today. And on the show today, actually quite a large number of items. Let me take a recent item which has cropped up actually just in the last 24 hours. And this is the issue of hunting for sport. There was an outcry yesterday, pictures posted online by a presumably foreign person who's come to the island of Islay, complete with high-powered weaponry, including a gun with telescopic sights and a sports bow, ostensibly to hunt for pleasure. Now, the hunting for pleasure involved in this was the shooting of wild goats which basically inhabit the island, maybe a bit of a pest, but shooting them from about 200 yards away with a telescopic high-powered rifle considered to be something of a pleasure for this professional hunter. Now, it raised all kinds of issues with people in Scotland about hunting generally, but the most specific one was hunting animals which are not to be eaten, are not necessarily being culled because their numbers are out of control. This is a person who hunts because they like killing animals and likes to pose with dead animals for selfies. And this is a sport which, trophy hunting as it's known, proliferates in other parts of the world as well. And there are people like this particular lady who just like killing animals and think that it's something to be proud of. Now, personally, as a meat-eating person, I realise that animals are killed all the time so that we can have food, and that's something which we generally accept if we eat meat. But in these cases, I mean, particularly I like venison, for example. Venison, usually the oldest animals in a herd of deer are usually selected to be culled and used for meat. So they're shot from a distance and they're taken away and butchered and we eat them. Fair enough, okay? But the idea of going around shooting a goat 200 metres away for fun is completely outrageous to most people in Scotland. Plus the idea of somebody coming into Scotland, how did she get a firearm from abroad into Scotland to do some hunting on Islay, and how is it that that's permitted here? And yet the law here seems to allow private hunters on private land to shoot for pleasure. I mean, grouse, for example, is another example of shooting for pleasure. The grouse shooting is an annual event in Scotland. It was invented by the aristocracy as a way of entertaining their rich friends. The grouse are eaten eventually, but it is a social activity. And hunting as a social activity really belongs in the Dark Ages. But hunting to kill individual animals because you enjoy killing them is a bit sick. And I think this is something that we have to really stand up against and start to legislate to get rid of people like this lady and her friend who just like to go and kill defenceless animals for no reason other than it gives them pleasure. Okay, moving along. It appears today that Cabinet Minister, Mr. Liddington, if I remember his name correctly, has seriously suggested that the British government should rent a fleet of merchant ships in order to take food presumably from the continent and bring it to other ports around the UK because of the chaos that they're anticipating happening at the Dover and Calais border in the English Channel. Now, the Tories are actually really beginning to think about this now. The more information that's coming out, the more detailed the suggestions about how they're going to get around these problems have become. And it's no surprise that people are getting frightened now, because it really is beginning to look like there is no solution to the problem of Britain leaving the EU other than a hard crashing out Brexit with no deal at all at the other end of it, simply because the British government refuses to relinquish its power over Northern Ireland and refuses point blank to deal with the elephant in the room, which is that if they want a frictionless border in Ireland, then they have to allow the north of Ireland to separate itself from the UK. Now, whether it reunifies with the south, I don't know, but if they were to allow Northern Ireland to separate itself from the UK and become a municipality, I've mentioned this before, then that border issue would go away. The British government won't do it, and the DUP won't hear of it. So the problem will never go away, and the fact of the matter is the British government refuses completely, point blank, to go past its red lines. It will not stay in the customs union, which allows for free movement of goods across borders without checks, and it refuses to stay inside the common market, the European market, which is where you get to sell your goods without taxation, without tariffs being placed on things going in and out of the country. So where does that leave Britain? Well, it leaves Britain crashing out with a no deal Brexit, because Britain has decided that its red lines can't be crossed. And when its red lines can't be crossed, there can be no other possibility but no deal. They will go on negotiating all the way up to the 29th of March, but nothing will happen. The European Union is saying they're quite relaxed about it because there's plenty of time up to the 29th. The European Union could do a deal as late as 2 weeks before the 29th of March and still have it ratified by the other 27 states. The reason is the EU can do that is because all 27 of the other countries of the European Union are all in agreement. They're all united and they all agree. Unlike the British government, which is fractured down the middle and nobody can agree, and not even the opposition who are supposed to oppose the British government, not even they can agree on what they would do with Brexit. Brexit is just a huge divisive wedge which has been shoved into the British state. It's like a stake through the heart of a vampire. It's going to kill it eventually. It's just a question of time. Brexit is literally that bad. It is a stake through the heart of a vampire. Now, Nicola Sturgeon has said as much recently. It's been reported, or these words have been attributed to her in the social media, that she has said that she believes now that the only possibility for the UK is crashing out of the EU with no deal, the so-called no deal Brexit. The no deal Brexit means that there would be no agreement about leaving the EU either. We would crash out there owing billions of pounds to the EU with no way of settling that properly, with no agreement with them on the orderly separation of Britain from the EU. It would be chaos. It would just simply close the ports, pull up the shutters and lock the doors and keep everybody out. How do you feed people? And this was where Lidington came up with his plan to rent a fleet of perhaps hundreds or dozens of ships to take food from other parts of the world and bring it directly to other ports around the UK. Okay, so a lot of bizarre things are going on at the moment around the UK. And in the middle of all of this, what does BBC Scotland report this morning on their TV show? A woman from Audit Scotland, who I've never heard of, who nobody's ever heard of, stands in front of a little plaque that says Audit Scotland and starts telling us that in Audit Scotland's opinion, now remember Audit Scotland is not Scottish, it's a British watchdog which looks at the way, in this case, the way the health service is being funded and managed. And she comes out and says that it's not sustainable in its current form and that they need to take urgent action on things like a backlog of repairs of hospital infrastructure and an ongoing crisis of staffing levels. Now, that is the same for every single part of the NHS in the whole of the UK, except in Scotland it's much less stressful. It's much less stressed than it is south of the border because it's been funded better here. Yes, there is an issue of needing more staff and training them up, simply because people are living longer, so there are more people needing help. That's inevitable in every health service across the developed world. So that's not something that should be a surprise to any auditor. To say that it's unsustainable is just nonsense. It's sustaining itself perfectly well at the moment. But the BBC cannot help but try to put a damper on any good news coming from Scotland, and the NHS is one of their favourite targets for trying to take Scotland down a peg or two. They cannot stand the fact that the Scottish NHS is outperforming all other parts of the National Health Service in England and Wales and Northern Ireland. It has outperformed them for years, and it continues to do it. And not only that, but the waiting time and the percentage of waiting time which Scotland sets itself as a target is actually higher anyway than the rest of the UK. And when Scotland doesn't reach that target, they don't say, oh, well, it's not our fault. They say, right, we'll do better. But they're setting their target at 95% of people being seen within 4 hours, treated and discharged. And that 95%, imagine that's 5 people in every 100 might wait a bit longer. The rest of the UK can't match that, not in any way, shape or form. Yes, we might have to wait for some time to get some services, but that's the same in any health service. But the point is, the service is still there. The people are still working in it. They've had a recent pay rise, if you remember. Okay, it's not huge, but they've had a pay rise, and the staff are being trained. The BBC were also reporting the other day that there was, what was it they said, something like £300 million. They were going to make out of new North Sea oil fields. Now, that was actually a lie. It wasn't £300 million that they were going to make from North Sea oil. It was £300 million was the cost of extracting the remaining oil from the North Sea. But that oil was worth £1.3 trillion in money terms at the moment. That didn't come out. What they did was they presented the cost of extracting the oil as the profit to be made from the oil, which was a complete misleading of the public. It's an absolute utter lie, right? And they got away with it because the watchdogs, if there are any, are looking the other way. The watchdogs are chewing the bone somewhere else. They're not interested in allegations made against Scotland by the BBC, because these are allegations, these are lies that have been spread about the North Sea. The North Sea has still got years and years and years of oil left in it, and they're still looking at the moment and still exploring for more in the North Sea and near Shetland and west of Shetland. There's oil fields surrounding the whole north and west coast of Scotland that haven't been tapped yet. But the BBC, they have to minimise it. They have to make it sound like we're doing really badly. We have to make it sound like the oil's running out, and we have to make it sound like the Scottish NHS is in as much trouble as the English NHS is. And it just isn't. These are not the truth. These are not the real reality of living in Scotland today. There's a lot of things wrong with Scotland, but the health service isn't one of them, and the oil industry isn't one of them. And when it comes right down to it, Brexit, which we reported on earlier on in this bulletin, is going to destroy the UK completely. And the SNP, ourselves as independence campaigners, we will have had less to do with the destruction of the UK than we would have done if we'd voted yes in 2014. This time around, the UK is killing itself. This time it's dismantling itself, it's dismembering itself before our very eyes. Brexit is the difference between England and the rest of the countries of the UK. It's the difference in attitude, it's the difference in what they want for the future, it's the difference in morality as well, and the way they see other people from other countries. It's the difference between English people, English voters, and the rest of us in Wales and Ireland and Scotland. We think differently, we want different things, but the English vote for Brexit, English and Welsh I would have to say, sorry, the English and Welsh to be accurate, vote for Brexit is fine for them. If that's what they want to do, then we would respect their voting for it, and they can leave the EU, and all the chaos that will bring with it is theirs to deal with. But why should we deal with the chaos? Why should we suffer the damage that they're inflicting on themselves? Why should we allow that to damage our country, our industries? The Tories have a terrible reputation for destroying industries in Scotland. Since the 1970s they've done it. They wiped out every industry off the face of Scotland at one point in about 1982 it really started. And at that point we still had a steel industry, we still had an aluminium industry, we had a car industry, we had an aircraft industry, we had a shipbuilding industry, a big one. we had coal mining, we had oil exploration, we had a fishing industry, we had all of these things, and the Tories just swept all of that industrial might away and basically just let it die, let it rust away, or sold off the bits of it that they could make money off. And what was left, we had to rebuild. And what is left has built itself back up into the Scotland we live in now, and now the Tories are threatening to do the same thing again through Brexit. And this time, I don't know about you, but I lived through their destruction the last time, and my life was blighted by it for about 20 years at least. Now that we've come out the other end of that Tory destruction, why on earth would Scotland allow them to destroy our industries yet again? Why would we allow them, with the stupidity of removing themselves from their closest large market, why would we allow them to do that to us again? I don't blame English people for voting for Brexit, but I do blame the Tory government for applying that Brexit to Scotland. It shouldn't do. Scotland voted very substantially to stay in the EU. That strength of feeling has remained for the last 2 years. In fact, it's gone up. It was 68% when we voted to stay in the EU. It's now up to more than 70%, according to opinion polls, that Scotland must stay in the EU. So with Nicola Sturgeon saying that she now believes that Britain is heading for a hard, no deal Brexit, then it's time for the Scottish Government, or the SNP particularly, and the rest of us, to get our fingers out now and make plans to get Scotland out of Brexit land before it's too late. That's it for today, folks, but let's get rid of sport hunting from Scotland. It's an abomination. It's something that's completely alien to us. Even grouse shooting was alien to us. That was invented by the British aristocracy. But this hunting goats with rifles from 200 yards away with night scopes, it's not sport. It's just murdering animals for pleasure. It's the equivalent of going around shooting people from a mile away just for the sake of saying I hit a person from a mile away. It's nothing to be proud of, and it shouldn't be happening here in Scotland at all. Anyway, I'm off. Have a great day. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.